Hey guys, welcome to another episode of 0 to 60 and a video that I'm pretty excited about because I want to open this package and I still haven't done it yet. It's a video on the forged con rods that we have received for an N54. I guess I should give a little bit of background. If this is the first 0 to 60 video you're seeing, behind me is my 17T turbo car. Now this car I've had late 2019, I got it, so we're coming up to 2 years of ownership, and it started off as a bit of a budget 0 to 60 mile an hour, 0 to 100 mile an hour project, sort of how fast can you get a cheap car to go. I paid $10,000 for it. The plan was have a budget of around $15,000, lol, and see how fast it goes, or see if I could beat Declan's M2, which at the time was doing, I think, a 4.3 second 0 to 100, and that was a brand new M2 with a stage 1 or stage 2 tune, whatever it was. I'll put a link to the video because it's kind of funny. It's an old video, but things got a bit out of control. I legit fell in love with this platform. I think it was the first time I drove it with an ethanol mix in it. As soon as I got this thing on an ethanol mix running about 18 PSI with stock turbos, I was hooked. Like, for the money, they are ridiculous performance cars. A full bolt-on car running E85 is fast in any language. However, as I got the bug, I thought, what's the next step? And it was just as sort of the Chinese turbo hype was really taking off online. I ended up buying a set of 17T hybrid turbos. They, at the time when I bought them, I didn't really understand what they were or what they were based on. It turns out they were, there's lots of myths about how these turbos come about, but it turns out they were based on the Vargas Stage 2 turbos. It looks like he was getting them made in China, possibly, and the Chinese factories just started selling them direct. Maybe. Hearsay, but I think that's about as close as we're going to get to the truth. But yeah, they are 17T hybrid turbos, and they will roll about 700-ish, maybe a bit more engine horsepower. There's quite a few guys out there running 600 wheel horsepower with them when you sort of max them out, and that brings us to what these are for. But they really do absolutely transform the car, and I think that's why a lot of the subscribers that we currently have watch the channel, is because of that install with those 17T turbos. And this thing is quick. I have dragged it at 6.1 seconds when I was running it on the old map. I've still got it on a relatively tame tune at the moment, but at the drags I did do a 6.4 second 1 to 2, and that was from a dig. So we are talking quite quick. We're faster than V12 Lamborghini at this point in time, which is a pretty serious bit of kit for a car that, if I didn't go crazy with the mods, you could probably do it for about 25,000 Australian dollars. Or in America, easy a $10,000 complete build setup with the Chinese turbos, second-hand port injection, you could go. Like, it's a serious bit of kit. But there is a bit of a catch to it. So there's two sort of paths that most N54 serious tuners go. It's either a single turbo, which I think is the ultimate goal. It is better. There's no way to argue about it, but it is more expensive. Or the guys where the category that I sort of fell into, where I didn't have enough money to go a single turbo, I still wanted to go fast, you go the 17T, the Chinese turbo route. There are obviously brand name turbos, RB turbos, the Vargas. They're all still developing stuff for the platform, which is amazing, and I'm not doubting those turbos. They have upgraded them and changed the designs, especially in the exhaust housing, to alleviate the need for possibly what's in this box. But yeah, anyway, back to my story. So I put the 17T turbos on, car was fast, loving it. One day, woke up, took it for a drive, and I could hear a misfire. Bit more investigation into it. I'd actually lost compression on cylinder 4. At the time, we didn't know what it was, and I bet there's a few of you guys that never actually saw the video where we discussed the problem. But it was actually being caused by corrosion on one of the battery wires. My water pump wasn't getting power, so I was driving the car around. Bizarrely, the oil temp never got hot. All I can assume is that the water pump would work sometimes and not work other. Long story short, I didn't have a water pump, and I reckon I've melted cylinder 4. The tune that I was on, although it was quick, I already had more aggressive maps to run. The motor wasn't showing anything strange in regards to knock or anything to imply that it was under stress. It was 27 PSI. I think we had it at about 12 degrees of timing when it melted. Or maybe that was the map that I had to go on. And it was never really working hard, but I did melt an engine. Now, because of the way that we film the videos, like a lot of the stuff goes up raw. It's not necessarily planned. It's just our day-to-day experience and playing with and modifying and fixing BMWs. So when we pulled that motor out and went through the whole process, I had a heap of people contact me about the dangers of running high boost with twin turbos on these N54s. And I was a bit took back by it at first, but ended up getting even information from Mr. RB Turbo himself through somebody else, but we've got to assume that it's correct. But long story short, there are issues with running upwards of 27, 28 psi on the stock housing turbos, which is what the 17T and the 19Ts are. And it sort of makes sense. Like, the turbine wheels on those turbos is so small, obviously it's not going to flow the power that we're doing. And you sort of get a little bit, people that have N54s and modify them, you do get a little bit numbed to the power that they're making. Like, they really do make a lot of power. And the only way to make power is pumping gas in and pumping it out. So when you've got those stock housings, obviously things do get hot. That said, there's a lot of people that will run those stock frame turbos at 30, 32 psi. And they might not do it all the time, but they'll do it for races, events, that sort of stuff. And they're bloody quick. All of a sudden, you're kissing 700 wheel horsepower, American wheel horsepower, but that's huge power. And that's what brings me onto these things. So my understanding of the N54, and I'd love to get some input in the comments, but it seems that the weakness of the N54 is the two main failures that I hear about from viewers and what I've seen on forums and threads, that sort of thing, are basically the rods bend, and the rods will bend ever so slightly. So you might not even know that you've got a bent rod. Apparently, actually I'm not going to say it, we'll get into it in another video, but you might not even know you've got a bent rod, and of course if the rods bend, it then twists the piston a little bit, and then you will break a ringland or crack a piston. The pistons themselves in the N54s, they're like a semi-forged design, and they're actually quite a good design from what I can tell. I'm not like some genius when it comes to engine design, but everything I've read about them, there's not really any specific issues that anyone talks about with the N54 pistons. I think a lot of the reason that people put upgraded pistons in the motors is upgraded pistons are cheaper than genuine BMW ones. But maybe the genuine BMW ones are so expensive for a reason. But the other downfall is those rods. Now, they do have forged rods in an N54. They don't have forged pistons, they have a semi-forged piston, but they do have forged rods, but it's not forged like what this is. It's not forged like a typical aftermarket rod. It still looks, it's still quite a small rod. And don't get me wrong, they'll make big power. If you're not running much boost under sort of 5,500 RPM, it doesn't load the rods up too much, and you will be able to roll big numbers on a dyno with your single turbo. But when you've got a twin car, rolling that power under sort of 5,500 RPM is a problem, because they will make so much torque down low, it's when the rods bend. So, big roundabout way of saying, I reckon if you've got a twin turbo car and you can afford to, a forged rod engine build should be something you should look at, because you can get a blown N54 for pretty good money from a wrecker, and it'll be blown, it'll be a cracked inland or a brent rod. Hopefully the block's not damaged, so if you can get one for the right price, here's what I'm thinking, and what I'm going to do with my one is forged rods, new ACL bearings. I still need to work out what I'm going to do with pistons. It's either going to be, I'm going to experiment here. It's either going to be a Chinese version of the standard piston, which looks like an OE piston, or a full forged piston from China as well. Let me know what you'd like to see. The standard China piston is cheaper than the forged one, and I'll get into it in another video. But yeah, I'm going to try and do a full-on budget build. Now, another thing that's quite exciting about this video, you guys might be able to see the logo already. This video is sponsored by Maxpeedingrods. Now, it's a bit funny because this is the first sponsorship we've ever had, and I'm sure everyone's heard of Maxpeedingrods. I was a huge fan of Maxpeedingrods in the early days. I thought what they were doing was pretty good. Like, the way that they were getting cheap products to the consumer was great. Where my opinion of them has differed a little bit is, as a YouTuber, we get emails from someone from Maxpeedingrods every day, and I'm not kidding. Like, we're a relatively small YouTuber, but every day there is a new representative from Maxpeedingrods emailing us, and it's bloody annoying. The dude that organized this was very helpful, and I do appreciate it. Jack, I think is his English name. Yeah, he was actually, no bullshit. I said, the only way I'm going to be interested in messaging you is if you can send me a set of rods for an N54. Now, these are a 600 Australian dollar product. They're 633. I have to put a link to them down below because it's sponsored, but there will be a link to these on Maxpeedingrods. And I'm not going to lie, I was going to use one of these in an engine build anyway, because they are literally about quarter of the price, a third of the price of like a Carrillo rod. And from what I can tell, they may be just as good, maybe. There are quite a lot of people running Maxpeedingrods, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube. Obviously, a lot of them are sponsored as well, keep that in mind. But they actually seem to be okay. Although Maxpeedingrods do other cheaper products, they do everything. I've got, that's a Maxpeedingrods valve cover just under the camera. Actually, there's a Maxpeedingrods valve cover on the car at the moment. We've got Maxpeedingrods timing tools that we use to strip the N54s down. But on the flip side, I do know a subscriber bought a Maxpeedingrods fuel pump for the N54 a couple of weeks ago and it failed. So it's not all amazing, but just something to keep in mind. But from what I've seen about the rods, and these rods, Maxpeedingrods, forged rods, have been around for nearly 4 or 5 years. And there's a lot of people that have run them in a lot of different engines, but I couldn't find any documentation on anyone running them in an N54. So I was kind of keen to try them out, mainly because they are the cheapest and it sort of suits this budget build. I don't plan on, I shouldn't say I said we don't plan on running these rods in O'Reilly. That car works really well with a stock motor, so it would be weird to build a motor and then run it in that car. But I will probably run it in this car, probably. We'll see how things go. There is nothing wrong with my motor at the moment, but let's see if we can make something wrong with it down the track. Yes, I want to blow it up. But yeah, anyway, this is the first time I've unboxed them. We'll see what they look like. I have looked at hundreds of pictures of them, and there's a lot of people that have gone all out and been very technical with them. But yeah, long story short, they're made of the right material. They come with ARP 2000 bolts. Now there was a bit of, I don't mind Chinese products, but I don't like a Chinese product when it's a blatant rip-off or when it's pretending to be something else. So if something's purchased from China that's cheap and it says that it's a genuine BMW and then obviously it's not, it's just a copy product, that does piss me off. And when Maxpeedingrods were doing their big promotion, probably 2 years ago, they were promoting them with ARP 2000 rod bolts. Now, ARP rod bolts are quite expensive. A set of ARP rod bolts is about half what this whole set costs. So I was a bit confused how they managed to do it so quickly, did a bit of research, and a few other people have done it as well. They're just one of the big purchasers of ARP rod bolts, and they are genuine ARP rod bolts. Maxpeedingrods don't make them, they only make the Conrods. There's a lot of technical stuff about the rods, and I'm not going to get into it in this video. I will put a link to a Mazda Miata site. It's probably one of the best ones and the most scientific approach to testing the Maxpeedingrods that I can show you guys. I'll put a link to that down below. But yeah, we have got the ball rolling on a forged build, a budget forged build. My plan is, depending on whether that motor that's just under the camera does need to have the block bored or honed if there's any damage to the bore, it should be sort of a sub $2,500 build to have forged rods, 4 pistons, and race style rod bearings. It's going to be good. Balanced to within a gram of each other. Again, I'm not going to measure it this episode, but we'll do it down the track. But yeah, we've got a forge build coming. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see done with the engine. Should we do genuine Chinese pistons or should I go Chinese forged? It's different money. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. We'll catch you on the next one.